My name is Lynden Gill. I live in McClave, Colorado, southeast Colorado. Was born here and grew up here, went to school here. Family farm. And my experiences here, I think, were just fantastic, and opportunities that I had. So it's been a great experience, and over a period of time, when I left from after college, I had no idea I might return. But after a time being away, having other experiences, it was a great opportunity to be able to return here. I was graduated from Colorado State University with a degree in ag economics, which has worked out quite well. After graduation, there was a call for service in the Marine Corps. We had choices to either join or be drafted. And I joined so I could make my own plan. Yeah. I wanted to be a pilot, so I flew in the Marine Corps. And after my service, I was interested in investments, stocks and commodities. So I was an investment banker for a few years. And then the opportunity came for me to return to farming and agriculture at home. So that was a great change in my life and my experiences. But I value the experiences I had previously, because I think that just gives you a broader perspective of the rest of the world rather than maybe one or two experiences. So it was a growing experience, and it's been a wonderful opportunity. It's a family farm, and over the years I had a chance to become involved in production ag services, which is marketing and providing services for agriculture products, chemicals, seed, fertilizer, sales and application. So that's been a learning experience. But in the process of farming, I was really interested in soil health. So that's been a long time ago when it wasn't really discussed much. Just a few people had those discussions. In my experience, I was very fortunate to meet some young innovators, actually from Kansas, graduates of Kansas, University of Kansas, and had some incredible ideas. So I worked with him learning about soil health, not near to the degree that we're looking at it now, but they planted the seeds for my interest. So I learned about infiltration and water absorption, tilth, compaction, soil health ideas, which people didn't think about much. So that was the beginning. That was a seed which created my interest and provided me a little step before what we're seeing today, which in reality, soil health has not been recognized to a large degree until just recent years. We went through a process of learning about tillage and soil management, and I'm not a scientist or an agronomist, but I like to learn new things and read. So that's where my knowledge has come from. Plus the opportunity of attending seminars where soil health is a topic or main topic of discussion. So that stimulated a lot of interest in, for me, a continuing interest in growth. So I think that there's opportunities, there's ideas that should be considered more thoroughly in ways to manage our soil health.
I agree. That's perfect. You answered our first question too, because we were going to ask you what about soil health intrigues you, and you talked about all these different parts, but if you had to pick one part that really intrigues you the most about it, what would that be?
I believe it's the soil life. When you look at the soil, take your sharpshooter shovel and dig into the soil, and you can look at the aggregate, the compaction layers, the life, the mycorrhizal fungi, and just things like that that are signs of health. The organic matter and the value of the organic matter in creating usable fertilizer.
Right.
nitrogen and phosphorus as it changes to become available for plant use. So that's the thing that really, if you think about it, that's the life to me.
That's awesome. That's a great way to like really break that down and describe that too. So that's awesome. You have been a part of the Lower Arc Board for many years. How did the district get its start?
Oh, that was a challenge. It was really it was like a bomb whenever these investors came in to buy water and remove it from agriculture use to other uses, primarily speculation. Back in the early 90s, outside investors came in and attempted to buy and wanted to move the water. And that put up a big red flag for the people in the valley about if the water leaves. Of course, water had left in previous years. Crowley County, yes, but there were others before that. And I remember when I was a little guy, when the first water sales were made, and comment from the producers or farmers in the area was, oh, they got a lot of money for that water. Well, it's gone now, so you don't get money from it. So the idea was to protect, but how do you protect it? Well, we didn't know what to do. It was difficult. How do you fight this? But over a period of time with organization of a group on the Fort Lyon Canal Company that was resisting this takeover, that was a kind of a seed that was planted, and other people became involved and interested. The idea came up to form a water conservancy district. There was an election for approval by the counties in southeast Colorado to approve this mill levy to support the district, which passed. I don't remember the numbers, but it passed overwhelmingly. It's been phenomenal how it's grown, how the district has grown and evolved. Our first interest was quantity, water quantity, protecting it. It's evolved into studying water quality now and soil health. But we've had a lot of projects, and that's what I like about the district. We've been fortunate to get grant funds to help study and do pilot projects in lease fallow and pond studies for evaporation, which was very beneficial to the farmers in the amount of water that they had to use to replace augmentation and the efficiency rules that were imposed after the Colorado-Kansas lawsuit. So it's been quite a process over the years. Actually very amazing how it's developed and how we've evolved into where we are now with water quality and soil health. The water quality issue has, there's been more awareness about water quality, particularly after the discussion in Kansas 3 or 4 years back by the governor there concerning water quality at the governor's forum on water in Kansas. Concern about radium in the water quality. And that stimulated, that was a flag to wake up. We've got to be more aware of quality. So we've worked on these projects, pilot projects, to look at soil health and water quality, which there's a large block of land here by McClave that's involved. I think it's a couple thousand acres where we're studying water quality. And hopefully from these studies, we will learn what the issues are and some tools that we might identify which can help us to answer water quality questions. And in the process, soil health.
Yeah. Because
I think wetlands and different things can be involved in the way you manage the water, how it's used. And of course, with more pivots being used in the area now, that changes whole dynamics of a lot of the production agriculture here in our area. Because until a few years ago, it was a very limited number of center pivots. So with center pivots, that changes things on what your farming methods and techniques are, and tillage and soil health and cover crops, things of that nature. And I think we're learning more and more all the time.
That's incredible. Could you talk about your trip to South Dakota with the EPA?
That was a phenomenal trip. What was really good is we met actual, real, live farmers, family farmers that are succeeding in different methods that they use to increase soil health and water quality in the process. Really impressive with the things they're doing there. When you walk in the fields that have been under these soil health practices, cover crops, etc., for several years, it was like walking on a sponge. The soil was different. It was alive. You could tell there was something different. So that was pretty impressive just to see that. And then to hear them talk about how things have changed for them in their tillage practices, their use of water, and how well the efficiency in the use of the water, the infiltration, the availability, the water retaining ability of the soil. It's really impressive.
That is very impressive. Could you speak to some of the methods that they used, or even the timeline? Because some people think that just takes like thousands of years to change the soil, but could you talk about how agriculture maybe speeds up that process, or even just helps nurture that stewardship of the soil?
Well, thanks for asking that question. That's one thing I wanted to bring up. It does take a lot of time. And it's not going to be instant. You're not going to see, that's my impression. That was my impression initially back many years ago in my first experiences with soil health. It's not something that's a silver bullet that changes this year and next year is just going to be incredible. It takes time in soil, changing the soil's, I hate to say structure, but that's kind of what it amounts to. So it has the ability to infiltrate more water and the use of the organic matter that's in the soil and how that can help in making more fertilizer available that's in the soil that's not available,
Right.
naturally being released and available. So those are things that I think are really significant that we haven't understood. There's so much to learn. And like I said, it's going to take a long time. You hear these different theories of how long it takes to change topsoil and the process of increasing your organic matter. But the methods that you use can help change that. And you'll have healthier soil. You'll have aggregates and more air spaces and spaces for water to be absorbed that can be helpful in converting. And then the other thing is tillage, minimum tillage, less tillage, less disturbing of the soil, which, a person has to identify which of these tools or opportunities that are there that you can change in your operation, which might be beneficial. But you have to find that out yourself. What will work in the way I farm, the way I manage, and what adjustments would be appropriate. And the bottom line, of course, is economics. It has to be profitable. And that's been my concern from way back. And I'll go back to my beginning. The people I was involved with initially, they were pretty hardcore about how or what the farmers needed to do. But they've learned over the years, and I see them every year briefly, they've changed. They've adjusted themselves to where you incorporate different methods and different ideas to add to your success. But soil health is so important. There's so many unknowns out there. We've just begun to really study the effects of soil health and what we can do to adjust and take advantage of the opportunities that may be there. It's learning what to do, when to do it, timing. But as far as the South Dakota trip goes, that was a very eye-opening opportunity to see real life farmers producing rather than in plots and experiments.
And you've talked a lot about both getting your education in economics and that you're not an agronomist, but you've learned all of these scientific methods. Do you think there is like a big disconnect between like what people think they can do and like what actually is happening?
Well, you know, my experience is whenever you have a different idea has been, oh, that won't work here. And that was one of the things that the people in South Dakota mentioned. Their first, oh, that won't work here.
Right.
Well, that applies here as well.
Right.
And there is one difference that I think we have to recognize. We're in an arid area here, very arid. And where we were up there, there's much more moisture in the form of rain. They had center pivots as well, which is just a great tool for, in my opinion, of increasing your soil health and the management methods you can use. It's a slow process. And what works in one place, on one farm, on one style of management may not work on another. So I think it's a chance for people to learn what techniques might fit their operation. And cover crops have become more of an interest just in the last 2 or 3 years here.
Right.
I see more and more requests for cover crops. And I think the key to cover crops is multi-species rather than just 1 or 2 things. Try to get 2 or 3 or 4 different cover crops, and that can be beneficial. And there's some people that go way out on that idea as far as what cover crops to use, but what might fit in one situation, maybe only a couple, 2 or 3 species. But you find out what is beneficial and which ones to use. So we've had quite an interest in cover crops, and I expect it to grow and as people realize more and more. But back to the arid area, which I wanted to focus on a little bit, that presents a whole different scenario than what you might have in other areas where there's more rain. And there's been research, there's been questions about the economics of cover crops in an arid region. And that area stretches from North Dakota to North Texas. And that we fit in there.
Right.
We're very arid. So yes, there is a question about economics. Is it profitable in certain situations? I really think the big tool for success, I go back to center pivots. That changes a whole, so many things and opportunities that you have versus furrow irrigation. And of course, another dynamic to consider is subsurface irrigation, drip lines, things like that. That's so expensive and probably is justified in certain types of operation, specialty crops, etc. But different management styles, different ways, the way you do things affects what choices might fit for you. So it takes time. That's all I can say. It takes time. And it's not going to change in a year or two. It's going to take a while to adapt to the technology and ideas. And farmers have been great innovators from back in the Dust Bowl days. And now, of course, we've seen the no-till stuff and strip till, and that fits well with particularly the, in my opinion, the center pivots. But it works in flood irrigation as well. But you have a residue trash problem in furrow irrigation with, and farmers know that. That's nothing new. But I guess my point is they've been really innovative over the years in adapting to ideas and technology. Now, in soil health, it's to, in my opinion, adapt what ideas are out there that fit your operation. And the time takes time, period, and patience.
That's incredible. What are the 3 things you think soil needs to thrive?
Air, water. Well, we should include a cover crop there to help retain the moisture. So, or some sort of residue management. Those are three things. I think there's probably more, but those things would contribute to soil health. Probably minimum less tillage, less disturbing of the soil is important to help improve your soil health. So many of these things are dictated by the water and how you're able to manage your water or lack of water. But I believe probably in one of the seminars I was at, one of the presenters mentioned even in arid regions, the important thing is, the relevant thing is to maintain, or what would you say, methods that would help to retain the moisture that you do receive. So that could be accomplished by residue, cover crop would contribute to that. And then the ability of that soil to penetrate, or that water to penetrate the soil, infiltration, into the spaces that are more porous because there's been less tillage, where that moisture can be stored for use. And that's where we get into the issue with heat and temperature, soil temperature, and losing that moisture in an arid region. That's what creates a lot of questions in some scientists' mind about the economics. So, not one easy way to do it. Just manage what might fit in your operation the best way you can to help improve it. So I don't know if I covered enough on the 3 or 4 key things to soil health.
Perfect. And I was going to get into some of your business. So could you describe what you do currently and how your operation runs, and how, I mean, you're so great at like consulting those farmers, I'm sure. So how, do you want to just describe your business for us?
Sure. I have an ag production service business, which is providing services like seed and fertilizer and chemical to the farmers. And we apply it, or they can apply it themselves if they have the equipment. And we provide spray services for weed control and pest control. And we have an aerial service which provides aerial services for primarily insect control as well as weed control. So that's what we do. And in some ways, there might be a conflict in soil health theory and what we do. And over time, the farmers will adapt to the things that will work best for them.
How do you think your company will also like adapt? Have you noticed like a change in the way you've looked at some soil health things, or any different services you've wanted to provide people? Or
Well, that's a process of time to see how things evolve. There's more things that farmers might do themselves if they have the time that we might provide service for.
I have another big question for you. What benefits does a producer have to apply compost rather than synthetic fertilizers?
I think compost and manure, things like that's definitely good for your soil. One of the questions is availability and cost and quality. I think those are key issues in making that decision. Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned, that my colleagues or friends that I knew in past years, their ideas have adjusted where they use multiple tools rather than, you got to do it this way. I think it's identifying which things to use.
Has it been interesting to see, I guess you talked about your colleagues, has it been interesting to see the way they adopt things or don't adopt things?
Well, they've adjused on what their ideas were.
Yeah. Has that been a big learning curve for them as well?
Oh, I'm sure it has. Yeah. And it was a learning curve for me too. I used minimum amounts of fertilizer. I placed the fertilizer and the timing as well as in-season applications. And those are important things because the efficiency of the fertility program and the way you apply it and the timing So those are definitely very important.
So you're going to apply it.
So you integrate
Yeah,
all these ideas maybe that fit you.
right. So if you're going to apply it, you got to apply it well, basically.
Right. I hear good stories and horror stories about compost and the effectiveness. I think specialty situations probably more appropriate than general at this time across the board.
What are the challenges with limiting synthetic fertilizers?
I think it's economics. You have to create a certain amount of income. And so to be effective, whether it's synthetic or it's compost or whatever your replacement might be, is economics. But I think if you have healthy soil, you're going to use what nature has there to a better, greater degree, because they're in that organic matter, in that process of mineralization and converting the natural phosphorus and nitrogen that's in your soil. You can receive benefits from your soil health techniques and methods to use that more efficiently. So there may be cases where you use less. And as I've always said, timing and placement, applications in the growing season, rather than one blast or one shot, leads to more efficiency,
Right.
probably less use of fertilizer.
I think if people start focusing on the economics approach to soil health, they'll be able to find those, I guess, trade-offs.
I think they can learn those things. As I mentioned, with the way you apply and use fertilizer. And I'll say again, spreading the applications over a period of time and using smaller amounts. And I think you'll use probably lesser amounts. Now, the other side of that is the management and timing involved in a farmer making those timely applications.
From a water quality standpoint, in the lower Arc Basin, nitrogen and phosphorus show up in samples in great hotspots. How do we manage this?
There's probably ways to use less, and there are probably cases where over applications are made where you can lose or volatilize or tie up where the nutrients aren't available.
Earlier, we had mentioned that there were some district studies that you had.
Well, and that's where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
I think with the water quality studies we've got going on the district, that those hopefully will provide an insight on some of that, some of those situations.
If you could share one piece of advice with a fellow producer, what would it be and why? How would you advise them to learn about these things? Do you think they're learning about these things?
Well, I think there's information and resources, seminars that are put on each year in the wintertime that are very interesting, provide information, ideas that might fit an operation. There's no sense relearning what somebody else has already learned if you can learn it from their experience, if it applies to the type of farming techniques and methods you use. So I think that's one way. And there's more written information in the farm publications about soil health than there was in past years. There's a lot more information out there and a better understanding. And until we have tests that probably identify healthy soil, and that's a long-term process, identifying what's in that soil that makes it healthy and why it's healthy. We know that the aggregate, the formation, the spaces are important, and that can be helpful in using, of course, the nutrients more efficiently, having more water available. Even if it is a minimal amount, there's more. Some reading I've done recently talks about How do you identify a healthy soil? What does that mean, and what's the classifications, and what's the benefits? That's pretty complicated, and it's going to take a lot of testing to understand that
Right.
and research.
You keep mentioning time. Do you think that this process and these, do you think this process is worth the time and the efforts?
Well, I think it'll evolve over time. Some of the things I've read talks about 10 years to identify what a healthy soil is, from testing. And like I said, what might be suitable under this type of soil or this type of moisture availability, whether it be rain or irrigation, what might work.